Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the Bible Bros. This is our first podcast. I am joined by the one and only Roneel Chaudhry. Roneel, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Tim. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. I'm glad to be joined here. Roneel's been a good buddy of mine since a long time. We actually didn't know each other at all until we met through a friend, and we ended up living together. And I think the first thing I found out about you was that you liked basketball.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, it'll work.
Yeah.
It was. I think one of the first times we hung out was I remember I took you to the Warriors game.
Oh, yeah, Warriors Kings.
Warriors Kings, and we decided to go sit lower level.
Yep.
So obviously I'm getting to know Bernie. I don't know him yet. I just know that he likes basketball. So we're hanging out, and I think the moment that I realized that okay, this guy is freaking awesome was we were sitting lower level, and we weren't supposed to be sitting lower level because our tickets were upper level. So we're sitting there, we're enjoying the game, and eventually one of the ticket people come over and hey, let's see your tickets. And, well, we didn't have any tickets, so I think I lost mine, or we threw them away. We didn't think we needed them, so sort of BS. And she's like, okay, well you need to move. You need to go back. And I was like, no, these are our seats. We pay good money for these seats, right? So I'm kind of into it, right? I'm into I'm doing the bit essentially, trying to see maybe she'll just go away. Right, so I'm talking to her for a minute. I'm like, no, these are our tickets and our seats, and we lost our tickets. And then I'm about to give up because I'm like, okay, the bit's over. She's not budging down. So I kind of shut up, and then somebody jumps in right behind me. Roneel jumps right in and starts going right into the bid again. We paid good money for these seats and blah blah blah. And so then I feed off that and I jump right back in it as well. We're like, yeah, these are our seats and blah blah blah. And putting up a big stink. Eventually, we did give in and go back. But that's when I was like,
nice while it lasted though.
Oh my gosh, it was
nice seats for sure.
Those were nice seats. It's rare that we get to sit that low since we're poor.
Should I talk about how the game happened, or how you?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Sure.
So basically, Tim and I moved in, and he asked me to be his Valentine, and he had this what was that called,
dummy. I made a dummy.
So he made a dummy. And he put a Warriors shirt on it and a picture of Klay Thompson and asked me to be his Valentine and got me these super sweet tickets. And it was just an incredible time. It was so fun.
It was a great bonding experience.
It was.
And we've been good friends ever since. So,
it's true.
Good friends forever. But we really, I was thinking lately, because I've done podcasting off and on for the past few years. And it got me kind of thinking it'd be fun to do a Bible podcast just because, unlike anyone, I kind of struggle to read the Bible consistently. It's not my favorite thing to do in the world. But I really like podcasting, so this was kind of a way I was like, hey, maybe this is kind of a fun incentive for me to start digging into the Bible more, because we get to talk about it and we get to learn about it and share with you guys about it. So that's kind of how this idea sprung up. And so I was kind of looking for people who would want to do this with me. And Roneel was one of the first people I thought of, and he was like, let's do it. So I'm like, yes, good. I have somebody who wants to do it with me. So that's what we're here today to. We're actually going to be going through Matthew.
Yep.
Today we're just going to be focusing on chapters 1 and 2. We're going to just kind of talk about some themes in the chapters, and we have a couple questions. We're going to go back and forth, and we're going to try to do a couple chapters each podcast, kind of through the book of Matthew. Now Matthew, I actually did not know this. Matthew was a tax collector. That was news to me. I assumed he was a fisherman like all the other ones.
Yeah.
So, because I know of Zacharias, the only other Bible character tax collector that I knew of. Did you know that he was a tax collector?
I did, yeah. I actually looked up Matthew when I had to do my internship. So I actually learned that he was a tax collector, and how Jesus called him out of that to be his disciple.
Interesting. And when you first heard he was a tax collector, were you surprised by that? Were you?
No, I think it kind of fits. I think the language doesn't really fit. He obviously learned as he was walking with Jesus, but I think some of the stuff that he talks about, you could tell his past. Even in later chapters, we could talk about it, but you could tell his past that he had a tax collector background. When you talk about things like money and stuff like that.
I feel like he's almost maybe he was the treasurer of the group, since he was probably the best with money. He's all right, guys, I'll hold the funds, and I'll go in this town and get food for us. Or I don't know if that's true or not. It's just totally speculating, but it would make sense that his skill set would be needed for this group of disciples that's going around, spreading the word of Jesus. Some keynotes about tax collectors themselves is that they worked for Rome, so they were typically seen as traitors by the local people because they're working for Rome, the oppressor at the time. Now, I don't know if Matthew was, this is obviously before he came to know Jesus. I don't know if he was a mean tax collector, because they did apparently overcharge quite often, because there's no way to know how much the tax really was. They could charge whatever they wanted. I'm sure that they charged a lot to get, profit. So I have no idea if Matthew was someone who overcharged or was a good, respectable tax collector and just took what was needed. That's maybe something to look into another day. I'm curious. So he was the wealthiest of the disciples, essentially, before coming to know Jesus. The rest were kind of middle class and lower class fishermen.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an interesting. I was surprised when I read that. I was like, oh snap! I didn't realize. I wonder if they made fun of him, because he was like came from money in the group. I always think about the disciples, and I know there's the stuff in the Bible about all these different stuff they did for God, but I always think about the times where they were just hanging out and what that would have been like. What kind of conversations were they having? Were they telling jokes at each other? Were they roasting like we do on a regular basis? I would love to know. I would love to go back and experience kind of life with the disciples and just what they talked about on a daily basis and how they lived. Because most of what they lived was what we live, which is normal lives, and then they had these moments of craziness where they performed miracles and preached in churches and had these amazing experiences with Jesus. So another thing to note about Matthew is his gospel was written more for Jews specifically, because he was a Jew himself, correct? Is that right?
Yeah.
So his gospel is more specifically written to Jewish people. And so you'll kind of notice that throughout, that he mentions a lot of Jewish customs, and because he's really speaking specifically to that group and just saying, hey, the Messiah is real and he's here and he died. So, you don't have to wait anymore for your Messiah because he's already came. Now, before we get right into it, do you have anything else that you know of Matthew that you want to bring up that would be interesting for our listeners to learn? He's a tax collector. He's Jewish. He's speaking to the Jewish side, Jewish audience. Mark, the other gospel is more for Christians, more for the Gentiles of the time, not Jewish people.
Yeah. I don't think I have anything right now about Matthew specifically.
Let's jump right into the first chapter, which right off the bat is a genealogy of all these different generations that led to Jesus. Now, we talked a little bit earlier, and you had a kind of an observation that you had about all that genealogy. Why did Matthew put this in? Right. That's what we're wondering. Why do we need to know this?
Yeah.
So why do we need to know this?
Well, I just think that it shows genealogy starting with David, going to Abraham, all the way down to Joseph and Mary. I think it just shows the line that Jesus came from, and the different people that we look at in their line of you have Rahab, you have Tamar, and all these different people who are outcast, and they're included in Jesus' line to show that his line before was broken people, imperfect people, and Jesus came out of that lineage. I thought was pretty significant. Yeah, what do you think about that?
That was actually, when you mentioned that, I was like, I actually I never thought about that, about what he was trying to show, that hey, Jesus came from broken humanity, just obviously he's special and he's God, but he was, when he obviously his objective coming to earth was to be human, to have a human experience, so he could relate with us and that he could have a relationship with us. So I thought that is kind of cool that he did. I mean, you look at all those names, and a lot of them I don't know, to be honest, but obviously you see the ones that pop up, and a lot of them have had issues, like we all do. I was kind of curious, out of that list, which is there one in particular that pops up when you're reading that list, that looks like that character, you like that character, or you resonate with that person within that genealogy? I was kind of curious about that.
Yeah, I actually have two.
Oh, you have two? All right.
So right there in verse 2, actually right in verse 1, it says, the book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. And I've always really liked David because he wrote most of the Psalms. And I just get so much wisdom from the Psalms. There are a lot of things that we can apply to our life today. And David was known as a man after God's own heart. And I just really love that, I just want to be someone that's a man that's after God's own heart. I strive to be that, and I just love that. Even all the stuff that David did in his life and the sin that he lived, sin that he committed, he was still known as a man after God's own heart. And that's what I want to be known as. And then I love that. Also, I love Abraham because in the Old Testament, Abraham, God called him the father of many nations. And I also just love that, like that title, like the father of many nations, and just like how we see like Abraham's lineage and like how, like just all the stuff that you see God doing, like redemption and healing and saving, like all that He did through Abraham's lineage and the promises that He made. I just find it to be incredible.
Okay, Abraham and David.
Yeah.
David also popped out to me.
Yeah.
David is my example that I use when I come across anyone who thinks they aren't redeemable, or that thinks that because they did something bad that there's no hope for them, or that they're not ever good enough to be in God's kingdom. And I go, well, the man after God's own heart committed adultery and murder within a very short time frame, and he's in heaven, and he's still considered a man after God's own heart. And obviously, other than that blemish on his whole life, he still lived a very godly, righteous life. But he made some big, huge mistakes. Yeah. And so, odds are, hopefully none of us make those massive of mistakes. But what that shows is that you are redeemable, no matter how much evil you think you have done. Yeah. It doesn't matter. Heaven is still there for you, and Jesus is still there for you, regardless. Yeah. So David is definitely one of those pops up for me, because it's just like, man, if David can still follow the Lord after that, then I'm all right, Yeah. I'm gonna be okay.
And it kind of just shows too, like in the book of Psalms, like how like real he was after he messed up. Like he just like there's a lot of Psalms that just show like how he went to God after committing adultery, and like how just real he was with God. And I think that's how we should be when we approach God, because knowing that He still loves us, still is there for us, and still is fighting for us, and He wants to redeem us. So I find that to be really cool.
I got to read a little bit more Psalms. I haven't dabbled too much in Psalms personally, but you've convinced me. I think Psalms needs to be the next read, because it's all the poetry too. He's such a good poet.
That's true. Yeah.
And so just so many cool kind of inspirational verses in there.
True, yeah.
From his creativity and his poetry. All right, moving on. I found it very interesting to learn, because obviously, we all know the story of Jesus, right? We know that Mary and Joseph were betrothed, is the word I think. They were going to be married, and Joseph finds out that Mary's pregnant, so he's thinking like, oh man, my girl cheated on me. What the flip, man? Well, and he's a good guy, right? So he could have shouted to the rooftops and told everyone in town, yeah, my girl, she's sleeping around and blah blah blah. And apparently in the Old Testament, the punishment for adultery was to be stoned. During this time, it was not quite so. It was just more of you would break it off. Yeah. So he chose to do the more admirable thing, and he was going to break it off. But then, of course, the angel of the Lord comes to him in a dream and says, like, hey, it's all good. Holy Spirit, pregnancy. She's not cheating on you. She's faithful. Take her as your wife. What was interesting is I didn't realize the Jewish marriage it was like a 3-part thing. So the first part was, as children, they were arranged by a marriage broker, is what they would call it.
As children.
As that's what it said. That's what the commentary of the Bible I was reading said. As children. Dang. So I don't know how early.
Oh yeah, what age?
At what age that Joseph and Mary were like, okay, these two we're gonna marry them. I have no idea that, but apparently as children they're already deciding who is going to be married to who. Then there's part 2, which is where the betrothal, which is where they are essentially they call it virtually married, but no sex. So I'm assuming they do everything else that marriage people do. I don't think they live together. I assume probably not. But it's almost like a trial period. It seems like before having sex. Part 3, you get actual married, you have sex, all that stuff. So they were in part 2. They were in the betrothal year period before getting officially married. So I thought that was interesting, because I never knew that was a Jewish custom. So I just figured I'd throw that in there because I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. In step 2, or like in part 2 of that, do you think like the girl still lived with her like father, or like her father's family?
I think I did read somewhere where they did still live at their, because when they get married the final time is when it says that when the commentary said that Joseph like takes her from her parents' house. So I'm pretty sure she's still living at her parents' house during the betrothal period, which makes sense too, because they were living together. It's really hard to live together and not have sex. It's pretty challenging. Yeah. So I actually had a question for you, Roneel, because obviously there's a lot of angels appearing in dreams for Mr. Joseph here, which is how God speaks to a lot of characters throughout the Bible through dreams. I was wondering if you had any if you have ever felt like you've had a spiritual dream or a dream where God was speaking through you through the dream or anything like that you wanted to share.
Yeah, let me just think really quick.
Here, while you're thinking, I'll tell you, I don't think I've ever had a spiritual dream per se. I've had like flashes of I call them like visions, or more just like a picture will come to mind during certain times that I'm like, whoa, that's like a really cool picture I just saw. I remember one time I was at church, and it's a particularly like tough time in my life, and it was like during worship, and I had like this picture come into my mind of like Jesus, and he's in the courtyard where, like, if you've ever seen the Passion of the Christ,
yeah.
he's being whipped before he's bears the cross and goes out. And so he's being like whipped, and there's this courtyard, and there's like seats kind of all around where people are watching.
Okay.
And like I'm there in the stands, and I'm wearing like a cloak over my head, almost like ashamed or something. And there's like other people in the crowd, and like Jesus, as he's being whipped, he's like calling out to me, and he's like, Tim, like, I love you, like, I want you to know how much I love you. And like as he's being whipped, he's like calling out to me. And technically, like I think in the vision itself, it was like I'm responsible, obviously, for what's happening. In some way because of my sin and things like that, but yet he's still, as he's being whipped, as he's being like judged and everything, he's still like calling out to me, telling me how much he loves me. And I saw this picture one day, and it's always stayed with me. It's like, whoa, like that's such a powerful image to me of like how much God loves us and how crazy his level of grace is, that he could be being completely beaten up and whipped and judged on my account and still be calling out to me, wanting to remind me that he cares about me.
Yeah.
So that's mine. Do you have time to think of yours?
I do. I actually have two.
Oh, all right.
It's actually allowed me to be a little vulnerable. I have two.
Here we go.
So the first one, so like for me, like just sharing with you guys, like since like high school till probably about now, like I'm a year out of college now, like during that time period in my life, like I really like struggled with like sexual like sin, sexual purity stuff. And I remember one moment when I was like really battling it, really in the midst of it, like struggling with like pornography and stuff. I really felt like in that moment, like God was just like asking me, like, or like I was hearing God like tell me like he was with me, and that like he wanted me to invite him into that, like into that brokenness, into that process. And like that just like that kind of like shattered my world. I'm like, man, like this is like my lowest like point, like I'm doing this right here. Like why would God want anything to do with me or anything to do with this? And like I just felt the Lord tell me like he was like wanting to be invited into that moment. And that like he was going to be the one, like he just wanted to walk with me in it. Like he didn't need me to stop doing anything. He didn't need me to, like he just wanted to be invited and to just walk with me. And I thought that was like super cool. Like, like that God wanted to be in that like intimate moment with me. Yeah. And like the second one I had was like, just like, it was like this prayer thing I was doing, like sozo prayer. I don't know if you ever heard of it. Like a sozo, like healing prayer.
Okay.
And I was being walked through it, and like the lady that was walking with us through it, she had us like think about like different childhood moments and like different memories that we've had from our childhood. And like I kind of started to remember things of like my past, of like when my dad would drink and my parents would fight, and like what I would do with like isolating myself and like different things like that. And then even like my life now of like just different challenges I've had, like moments where I've like messed up and like failed really bad, and like she asked us to invite God into those moments. And in my lowest moments, I felt like I was just like such a failure. Like I'm just, like I didn't, like I hated myself. Like I took myself back to moments where I hated myself, and like invited Jesus into it. And like in like those lowest moments, and I felt like when I invited God into it, like he was in each of them. He was fighting for me in each and every one of those moments. And like I just thought that was like so encouraging for me to like really know that he like never left me or like forsakes me, and like I know we hear that, but like it just like really like I learned
you
that
felt it, right?
Yeah,
it was more than just a verse that you read. You're like, oh wow, I believe this, and I see that this is true.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, awesome, Roneel. Thanks for sharing that.
Okay, well,
let's move on here. Yeah. So then let's continue the story. Well, why don't you continue the story? Tell us what happens next after. The angel comes to Joseph, tells him, "Hey, your girl's all good. She's faithful. Stay with her. Get married. Give us what happens next."
All right. Yeah. Along with that, I just want to ask you a question as well.
Oh, okay.
Verse 22, going to 23, it says, "All this took place to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophet. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son. They shall call his name Emmanuel," which means God with us. So just as a unique name of God, I just wanted to ask like what your thoughts are on Emmanuel. I know we hear it a lot. People name their kids that, but what do you think about what that means? Like, what does that mean to you? Like, God with us.
God with us. I mean, I feel like it means exactly what it says.
Yeah. Yeah. Like in your own life. I mean, like if you have a.
Oh man, you put me on the spot here. I mean, it's kind of like the verse you shared, right? He will never leave me nor forsake me.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, that's awesome. I know that my name in particular, Timothy, I was named after Timothy in the Bible, which means God honoring. Yeah. And I'm pretty proud of that. I think that's a really cool, name to have. And when I think about it, it makes me feel good. Just going like, hey, I'm honoring God, and that's what it's all about. So.
Yeah.
Do you know what your name means, by the way, Roneel? Have you ever looked it up?
I actually never looked up Roneel, but my middle name's Ryan, which means king.
Oh, okay.
Which I thought was
so
really cool.
you're like LeBron then. You're the king. You're the chosen one.
Sure.
You're probably gonna hear a lot of basketball references, FYI.
Yeah, you will.
Roneel is a big Warriors fan. I'm a Kings fan, so we we don't always see eye to eye on basketball, but we do love it. So
that's good.
Although I'm more with you now, I'm not as big of a LeBron fan as I used to be. He's not a fan. Anyway, let's move on. So basically what happens is they get married, and they give birth to Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And during that time, we're into chapter 2 now, for those following along. So Jesus is born in Bethlehem, and it's during the reign of King Herod. Yeah. I said that right, King Herod. King Herod is a pretty evil dude, pretty evil king. And some wise men, and I'm not sure really their backstory of like how they even came to the picture. The Bible just says that, hey, about some time later, the wise men from the eastern lands, they came to Jerusalem, and they said, where's the newborn king of the Jews? And we saw his star as it rose. We've come to worship him, is what it says. So I don't know these guys' backstories at all or where they came from, but apparently they saw a star and they were like, all right, that's Jesus. Let's follow it. And so Herod is, he's disturbed because he doesn't want anyone stealing his glory. He doesn't want hearing about a new king because he's the king's, right? He's got to protect that. So he calls a meeting and finds out that Jesus is supposed to be born in Bethlehem because there's a prophecy written before then, saying that basically he's going to be born in Bethlehem. And so he calls for a private meeting with the wise men, and he pulls a little psychology trick on him and goes like, hey, I want to worship Jesus too. Like, you guys should go out and find him and bring him back so I can worship him. Mm-hmm. And then they're probably thinking like, okay, yeah, that sounds great, King Herod. Like, totally. But obviously, Herod, he's lying. He's just tricking them so they'll bring Jesus back because he knows that if he tries to send soldiers, that it's probably not going to go very well. He's not going to be able to get the results he wants. So he's kind of going with like it's like a sting operation that he's leading, where he's like sending these guys in, hoping that they'll bring him back without too much trouble. And so, of course, the wise men go and they find Jesus. They give him the frankincense, the myrrh, and the gold. And I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here. I probably should have mentioned this before. Do you feel like there's any, like those gifts that he gives them, do you feel like there's any symbolism behind the gifts themselves, or you think just, those are just nice gifts to give Jesus? Gold, myrrh, frankincense. I'm not sure if you knew anything more about the. I feel like there's got to be a deeper meaning behind those.
Yeah, I feel like there might
gifts.
be a deeper meaning to each of those things, but I just think in that time, like it was like worth a lot. Like it just meant that like they're just like gifts that were worth a lot, So they it was.
I mean, I got my frankincense right now.
Like it was fitting that they gave that to Jesus, because like it was like worth a lot. So yeah,
he's a king. So the wise men they worship God. They give him the gifts, and then when it's time for them to go, hey, what do you know? They have a dream, and an angel's like, yo, King Herod, he's lying to you. He's tricking you. It's time to bounce. Get out of here. So they escape. They don't come back to King Herod with Jesus. And then here we go again, another dream. An angel comes to Joseph and lets him know, get up, flee to Egypt with the child and his mother. Stay there until I tell you to return, because Herod is going to search and try to kill your child. Mm-hmm. So, Joseph, but he's probably like afraid to go to bed at this point because he's just like, oh my gosh, I just keep having these dreams. Yeah. I'm just all like, what's going to happen next? I'm going to fall asleep and, who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So they leave for Egypt with the child, and they stayed there until King Herod died.
Yeah. And just really quick, what do you think about verse 15? It says, so like this is them talking about Egypt. It says, and they remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophet, out of Egypt I called my son. So what do you think about how a lot of what happens in the New Testament, like it was prophesied in the Old Testament?
I mean, I love it because I'm a pretty hard skeptic. I like evidence. I like facts. I like study, research. So like if there's something, if you can take a document that like, hey, this is dated at this time, and you can now see that there was a prophecy that came true, and you know the document is legit, and you can look back at that as a reference, then that's nice evidence to be like, look, they prophesied this. This was a legal document that was written by this person, and we can say that with a good assurance.
Yeah.
And look, it came exactly true how it was supposed to. Like, if that isn't evidence for the existence of God and for our faith as Christians, then like, what is? You know,
Yeah.
like we can't always rely on miracles happening or just seeing things happen, wonders. We can't really rely on those consistently to provide faith. Like, we need evidence, we need sound truth, and to me, every time a prophecy comes true like that is like it's very cool. It's like, oh, there's another one. At some point, you just have to go like, man, you can't deny the level of accuracy and the level of predictiveness that gives credence to the Bible being a really accurate book. Yeah. So that's what I think about it. What do you think of when you see those prophecies come to light?
I agree with what you said. Like over and over again in the New Testament, we see that the Old Testament prophecies are like being like fulfilled, and it's just cool because like the Old Testament says like in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and like it just shows like Jesus was there from the beginning, and like he was in the Old Testament, and like everything that he did in the New Testament, like there's like a foreshadowing in the Old Testament. So I just think it's really cool, like you said, and it just shows that like it just shows who Jesus is, and like he's real, and like he's living. So I think it just like gives more evidence into like who Jesus really is.
Absolutely. I think obviously he knows humans, and he knows that we're fickle at times, and we have a hard time believing in things and trusting things because we're fearful, and we have sin, and we have fear. And so, he knows that we need to see these prophecies come, that we need to be able to see these to then kind of find rest in our minds to know that, oh, this is accurate and legit. We can trust this thing. And so I think obviously it's done with a lot of intention in order to help us just rest in our faith,
It's true.
Let's see. So what happens next? So Herod dies, and before he dies, he even does something worse. So he decides to send soldiers to kill all the boys that are 2 or younger in Bethlehem, because he just wants to, hopefully one of them's Jesus, and hopefully they die. So I think verse 18 says, a cry was heard in Ramah, weeping and great mourning. Rachel weeps for her children, refusing to be comforted, for they are dead. So once again, Herod, at this point we get it. He's pretty evil and is a murderer, essentially. Yeah. So that sucks. And then Herod died. And then, hey, guess what? Joseph, another dream. All right. His anxiety isn't high. Yeah. So actually, this is a good one, though. So he says, in the dream, it says, get up, the angel said, take the child and his mother back to the land of Israel, because those who are trying to kill the child are dead. And so Jesus goes back to Israel, and now Judea, Herod's son Archelaus is now the new ruler, I believe. Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, and then hold on a second. I forgot this part. So then he gets warned in another dream, because Herod's son apparently is evil too, and leaves for Galilee, and then they live in Nazareth. And then again, it fulfills another prophecy that he will be called a Nazarene. And that ends chapter 2. Yeah. So a lot of, I feel like this, to almost like summarize these 2 chapters, a lot of angels appearing in dreams to help give direction to Joseph. Yeah. We have evil kings who are trying to kill Jesus. And we have, I'm trying to think of any other, and then we have a lot of prophecies being fulfilled. Yeah. So, based on those, is there anything else you want to add about those 2 chapters that stood out to you, or
yeah? I mean, I just think cool? It's kind of crazy how like it says, when he heard that Archelaus was reigning over Judea in place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there, and being warned in a dream, he withdrew. So it's just like crazy how like the dream happened, and then they just like did whatever the dream said. Like that's how like special and like I feel like meaningful it was to them. And it's like, I feel like for me, like if I'm like afraid of something, like And if I have a dream, like I don't know, like if I would do what the dream said,
Mm.
And like I feel like they operated that way, like they just did it.
That's a good point.
It's just kind of crazy to me,
Yeah, well, if you had a dream tonight,
Yeah.
saying like, Roneel, I want you to like, I'm trying to think of something kind of crazy. I want you to travel across the country and start your own Chi Alpha.
Yeah.
Would you do it, or would you
Yeah.
just be like, nah, it's just a dream.
Yeah.
It's just my brain was trying to just think through possibilities and.
Yeah.
Okay, well, real quick, since this isn't really spiritual related, but what's like the craziest? I mean, spiritual or not, what's like the craziest dream you ever had, or the most like out there dream? Because I have some wild dreams.
Yeah, you can share yours first.
Okay, I think so. I have dreams all the time that are dreams within dreams, and I've had a dream within a dream within a dream. And what that means is, I'm experiencing one part of the dream. I wake up, quote unquote, into another dream, and I'm like, oh, I woke up from that dream. Then within that dream, I would then wake up again.
That's crazy.
To my bed and going, what the flip? Yeah. So I've had that a number of times, and that is incredibly trippy.
Yeah.
And takes me a few moments to like recalibrate my reality.
Yeah. I can't really think of like crazy dreams I've had.
Okay,
Like,
well, keep it in mind. Maybe next podcast, if you can think of one.
Yeah, definitely.
I think I remember one where me and my brother, we were being framed for murder. And we were on the run, and I remember we were like running through the woods at night, and there's like a helicopter spotlight on us, and we're like booking it, and we end up getting like separated, and we're hiding in the woods. And the next day, I bought some clothes from a thrift store to like look all disguised, and I'm like walking across the street, and all of a sudden this car pulls up, and it's my old driving instructor, Jim Sheridan, is in the car, and my brother's in the car next to him taking driving lessons, and that's when like my brain went, okay, this has to be a dream, and then I woke up. So anyway, I know that wasn't spiritual related, but so that is Matthew chapters 1 and 2 for you. Just kind of an overview and just a couple things that we noticed and liked, and we hope you enjoyed this half hour of just breaking down these 2 chapters. I'm thinking our next one we'll just be breaking down the next 2 chapters after, unless they're really short. I haven't looked at them.
Yeah.
We could add one in potentially, depending on how much we think is in there.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Tim, what do you think about when we post this? We could like post our discussion questions, see what the viewers have to say.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, we would love to hear from you guys, the viewers.
Definitely.
I'm trying to think I would love to hear if you guys have any questions or if you have any things yourself that you want us to cover.
Yeah.
You can definitely leave a comment below. I think this is going to be up on YouTube, so please leave your comments.
And even answers to some questions that we asked in this podcast too.
Yeah, because there's still a lot of stuff we don't know. Like if you have any more stuff about Matthew, I'm sure some of you out there know way more about Matthew than we do.
Yeah.
That just the guy himself, just learning more about him. I'd love to know more. So if you know more about Matthew, please comment below. Or obviously those who listen to us, who know us, who see us on a regular basis, let us know. We want to know more about Matthew, since we're going to be covering him a little bit more in the book. And if any of you ever wants to be on our podcast, let us know. We'd love to have a guest, just another perspective, another. We all see so many different things when we read the Bible.
That's true.
So it's cool to put it all together and get a big old picture of it all.
That's true.
But anyway, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to spending more time with you guys. This has been Bible Bros. We hope you guys have a good day.
See you next time.
God bless up,